Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. I am Doug Neill, and today I want to talk about an aspect of learning that sometimes goes overlooked. And that's the fact that it's cyclical. I think it's easy to fall into the trap of kind of thinking of it more as a binary. You either know something or you don't. You know a piece of information or you don't. You have a particular skill or you don't. I don't think that's how it actually works though. When it comes to knowledge, there is depth of knowledge, not just an on or off switch. And when it comes to skill, there is depth to your skill. It's not just that you have a skill or you don't. And since what we focus on here is the skill of sketching out ideas, let's draw a little bit of a diagram. I'm going to go with the spiral upward. It looks like this. Let's add some arrows along the way so we kind of always know which direction we're going. Onward and upward, left and right, as we make our way, hopefully higher up the levels of knowledge or levels of skill as we deepen those skills and that knowledge. That part doesn't work with this direction, but we're able to do more and more with it. So I'm okay with this moving upward. And it's not just that we're moving up with each cycle. I actually think it's helpful to include something on the left and right here. Something that we're moving from, something that we're moving to as we make our way up. And there's a particular transition that I think is true for visual note takers and also true for most knowledge and skill development. And that's moving from a state of confusion, which might look something like this, to a state of clarity, which might look something like this. So we go back and forth from this state of confusion when we don't know what's going on, we don't know how to do the thing we're trying to do, we don't know the thing we want to know. We move from confusion to some sort of clarity around that particular piece of knowledge or particular skill. But then as you go on with your life, you probably encounter some other state of confusion, either around a different topic or perhaps that same one, and you just forgot the thing that you had learned. So you have to go through that transition again from confusion to clarity. That transformation there is one of the things that I think visual note taking is particularly good at, because when you give yourself something to look at, something to work with, you can see the confusion, you can see the pieces of the puzzle and start to put them together. And then if you're able to create a useful artifact that represents the clarity that you've achieved, that's a helpful resource that you can look back on in the future. That maybe allows you to tighten up this spiral, perhaps, the next time that you find yourself needing to go from confusion to clarity. But I think one of the key ideas here that I want to get across with this diagram is that this thing that's in between confusion and clarity, it's not a light switch. You don't just get to flip over to clarity and then stay there. It is going to be this cycle. There are things that you can do to reinforce this clarity, make things a bit stickier for yourself, creating visuals being one of those things. But even this technique doesn't mean that you're going to remember every single thing that you ever sketch out. You're still going to have to remind yourself of and relearn, repractice certain skills and knowledge. And there are two aspects of this journey, of this cycle, that I think are worth highlighting. In moving from confusion to clarity, I think that resilience is important. I think it's worth acknowledging that this path isn't always going to be quick and easy. There's a stick-to-itiveness that's needed to make this transition, not just once, but many times in a given day, thousands of times over your life. In the case of making meaningful marks. Resilience might show up as the first piece of paper that you write on, your first sketch, maybe not being useful, and you have to throw it away and grab a blank sheet of paper and try again. That's okay. It's even kind of fun and freeing to scrap what you had been working on, give yourself a new piece of paper, and go at it again. So you keep at it until you have created a useful visual artifact for yourself. That's what resilience looks like in the world of visual note-taking. You get to clarity through the creation of a simple drawing or diagram, no matter how many sloppy drafts you had to do before you got to that simplicity. So that resilience gets you from confusion to clarity. But I think there's something helpful in the journey back from clarity to confusion, and that's a bit of reflection. I think that there are certain lessons learned about this journey that you won't even recognize until you make it all the way here. And you look back at that state that you were in, you look at what you had to go through to go from confusion to clarity, and you make note of what worked well and what didn't. You take a moment to acknowledge what it was about this journey that was hard, what about it was easy, what made it possible. That's what you remind yourself of when you're kind of in the liminal space, I suppose, as you're making your way, not intentionally back to confusion, but just inevitably, because of how life works, you'll make it back here at some point. If on your way back or before you start the trip in this direction, you do a bit of reflection, I think that's what will make the next iteration of this cycle a little bit smoother and a little bit quicker. It's likely always going to require at least a little bit of resilience to make this transition, no matter how much reflecting you do, no matter how many times you've been through this cycle. But I do think that reflection helps. So what that might look like for us as visual note takers, each cycle around this tornado here could represent every single sketch note that you create. At the start of it, there's going to be at least a sense of blankness, if not confusion, and hopefully you get to some clarity through the creation of a simple drawing or diagram. Certain aspects of the creation of that are going to be hard. Some aspects are going to be easy. You're going to find over time what creates a sense of flow for you. And that's what I want you to make note of. That's the purpose of reflection, is to identify what was it that contributed to a state of flow on this particular iteration, or maybe what inhibited flow, so that over time you can start to create the conditions that make it more likely for that state of flow to occur. That can come down to the materials that you use, the process that you start with, your mindset going into the experience. All of those things play a role in your ability to make meaning from any particular situation by making marks on the page. So this cycle applies to us as visual note takers, and I think it applies to any other skill that you might be developing, any other knowledge that you're trying to acquire. Treat it as a cyclical process. Know that it's not going to be the flip of a switch. Use the transition in this direction to develop your resilience muscles, and use the transition back to practice reflection. If you like that type of simple sketch, then I think you might enjoy my newsletter called Simply Sketched. That's where I share my latest work as well as other interesting visual thinking work that I come across in other parts of the web. I will share a link to that newsletter down below this video. Thank you so much for watching it. I'd be curious to hear what cycle you are going through. What is it that you're learning right now? Whether it be a skill or a category of knowledge, I'd love to hear that. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.